So, dear ladies and gentlemen, we're slowly starting with the second part of our first panel. And our next speaker is coming from Poland, Professor Jerzy Wiatr, who will tell us something about reflections on the Russian Revolution. Please, also sit here.
Well, I would like first to express my gratitude to the organizers for organizing this meeting, for having invited me, and particularly for deciding to go against a certain current which now is very visible in my own country and some other places as well, the current of ignoring the importance of the Russian Revolution. And it's interesting enough that even in Russia, as far as I understand, there's not going to be any particular celebration of the centennial of the, what in Soviet tradition was called October Revolution, and the true beginning of the February Revolution went somehow unnoticed. My own reflections on the Russian Revolution go back in my memory to my encounter with one of the great historians of the Russian Revolution, Isaac Bolsher, whom I had the great honor and pleasure to meet 60 years ago in Oxford, and whose contribution to a series of lectures delivered on the 50th anniversary of the Revolution in 1967, I would like to treat as a starting point for my reflection. Now, Bolsher, as you know, was a former Polish communist, then a prominent Trotskyist and the biographer of both Stalin and Trotsky, believed that the real revolution, the one that has to be remembered, was the October Revolution. In his small book on the Russian Revolution, published on the 50 years anniversary, he even said that had there been no October Revolution, the event of February of 1917 would have passed unnoticed by the future generation. I don't think Deutscher was right on this point. However, that was the kind of thinking about the Russian Revolution which prevailed on the European left 50 years ago. The stressing of the importance of the revolution, even by those who are very opposed with Stalinist and post-Stalinist Soviet regime. Let me address a couple of points of controversies connected with the interpretation of the Russian Revolution. First, I have already mentioned, were there two revolutions or just one? The official Soviet historiography distinguished clearly between February Revolution and the October Revolution, or to use Trotsky's terminology in his historiography revolution, the bourgeois revolution and the proletarian revolution. My own way of looking at the revolution differs from this. I see it as one revolution which went through stages, very much like the French Revolution of 1789. The Bolshevik takeover could be compared to the Jacobean stage of the French Revolution. In fact, both the Jacobins and the Bolsheviks represent a certain phenomenon which is common in all revolutionary upheavals, that is radicalization of the revolution at certain stage of its history. However, there is a great difference with monumental consequences. The Bolsheviks were the Jacobins who had not been defeated. True, Trotsky, after he had lost in the struggle for power, coined a version of Russian history which would play on analogies. So Trotsky, in exile, called the Stalinist regime the Thermidorian regime, later on using also the analogy to Bonapartism. But that was nothing but a kind of ideological game trying to justify and explain away his own defeat. In reality, the Soviet regime was, in my way, an almost inevitable consequence of the victory of the Bolsheviks in the Civil War. I'm not saying that the victory was inevitable. It was not. The Bolsheviks could have been defeated on very many occasions. By the way, one of the opportunities lost in terms of possibility of defeating the Bolsheviks in the early stage was connected with Poland's history. In 1919, when the Bolsheviks were at probably their weakest point, the Polish leader, Marshal Piłsudski, refused to join hands with the White Guards, with Denikin and Wrangel, and to defeat the Bolshevik regime, and he did it for such a good reason, because he believed that the white generals would have been much less favorable to independent Poland than the Bolshevik regime. Also, he believed that the Bolsheviks would not stay in power for long, and he was mistaken. So I'm not saying that the Bolsheviks' victory was inevitable, but what I'm saying is that the victory of the Bolsheviks made the establishment of the totalitarian regime inevitable. Why? For two reasons. One is that the Civil War created an abyss of hatred on both sides. Over this abyss of hatred, a less oppressive regime was almost impossible. And second, and connected with this, within the Bolshevik party, the Civil War elevated a certain type of personalities. People ironed in war, brutal in their experience. In other words, the old type of Russian revolutionary, idealized with strong emphasis on moral values and so on, was substituted for by a warrior with all the kinds of brutal military. This, however, does not mean that the inevitability of the establishment of a totalitarian state equals the inevitability of Stalinism. Stalin regime was totalitarian, but totalitarian regime can exist without Stalinist excesses. During Stalin's life, or even soon after, it was common among Western political scientists to believe that mass terror was a kind of inevitable element of totalitarianism. In 1956, when Karl Joachim Friedrich and Zbigniew Brzezinski published their classic work, Totalitarian Dictatorship and Autocracy, they listed mass terror as one of the definitional characteristics of totalitarians. Years later, Brzezinski corrected themselves, arguing in one of his later writings that mass terror has not been a kind of necessary element of totalitarianism. In other words, that totalitarianism can exist without mass terror. But that is the experience of post-Stalinist Russia. It's true that after the death of Stalin, or more precisely after the defeat of Beria and his cohorts, the Soviet regime remains totalitarian, but differed from the Stalinist state by the fact that it was totalitarianism without mass terror. So Stalinism has to be interpreted as a special case. Was it a consequence of the pathology, psychopathology of the leader? That's the position of Lech Wałęsa, whom I had the privilege to know and whose argument for many years I consider one of the best, maybe the best explanation. Well, probably it's very little doubt that Stalin, in his adult years, developed psychopathological characteristics. Tucker presented in his book on Stalin plenty of evidence to this. But the point, I think, is something else. Psychopathology of the leader does not explain the functioning of the regime, because the obvious question would be why the elite not only tolerated, but elevated a pathological person. So my explanation of this evolution of Soviet totalitarianism to this pathological Stalinist stage focuses not so much on the personality of Stalin, but on the, so to say, collective personality of the Bolshevik elites. And again, it goes back to the experience of civil war, to the brutality of the civil war. If during the civil war, shooting innocent people as hostages was a normal, accepted practice, it is only one small step from this to the situation where one accepted jailing and eventually shooting of one's own comrades during this Stalinist period. But then comes the question of inevitability of the evolution. Was it inevitable, or was it a great historical mistake? Here, commentators writing on the Russian Revolution differs mostly according to their ideological positions. Communists, not only Orthodox communists, but also dissident communists, like Trotsky himself, Deutscher, believed that the revolution was inevitable. Opponents of the Russian Revolution, like Karol Kautsky, believed that not only it wasn't inevitable, more that it was a gross mistake made by the leaders. Neither of this interpretation I find satisfactory. The revolution was not inevitable, not because almost nothing is inevitable in history. But the revolution was made inevitable at a certain point of the development. In other words, when we say that something became inevitable, you should ask since when, at what point the inevitable revolution became inevitable. Okay. I think that the Russian Revolution resulted with a series of serious blunders, of which the most important were two, both linked to the war. The first, to go to war against German and Austro-Hungarian Empire, when Russia was flagrantly unprepared. Only a few years before, it was badly beaten by Japan. And nothing happened to make her better prepared for a confrontation with much more powerful aggressor. What was the first mistake? First blunder, going into the war. Could this mistake have been avoided? That's difficult to say, but I don't think that that decision was made. And second, already during the war, when the Russian forces were being defeated, the decision to prolong the war instead of accepting defeat and asking for armistice, in other words, accepting defeat, what the Bolsheviks did after having seized the power, they continued on the Tsarist regime and the permission there. But one can go even farther to the past. I think there is a link between the revolution of 1970 and the frustrated efforts to reform Russia after the revolution of 1905. And if one would like to look for a single event that symbolizes this catastrophic failure, I would point to the assassination of Stalin. The assassination of Stalin per se was not a more turning point of history, but it symbolizes what was happening in Russia. On the one hand, the emperor and the conservatives who considered concessions made in 1905 or later 1906 as temporary and improper. And on the other hand, the radicals who thought that the concessions were not big enough. All of this combined is the weakening of the pre-revolutionary vision. But that concerns the past. And now my last comment concerns the consequences. The Russian Revolution was meant to start the world revolution, but it did not. It did not for a couple of reasons. One was of the German, Austrian, Hungarian revolutions. The other, linked to the history of Poland, was the defeat of what the future Marshal Mikhail Tukhachevsky, in his book on the war with Poland, called The Revolution on the Violence. Tukhachevsky explained in his comments on the war clearly that the strategic objection was go over the dead body of bourgeois Poland to Germany and to the West and to ignite the world revolution. That didn't happen. But this does not mean that the revolution did not have any impact on the world. Indirectly, through the Second World War, it produced communist regimes in Eastern Europe. But that proves to be not a very lasting phenomenon. In fact, less than 50 years later, the communist regimes in Eastern Europe disappeared. And not only in the states where they were imposed by the Soviet Army, but also in former Yugoslavia. But what remained is the impact of the Russian Revolution on the non-European regions of the world. We are now discussing this problem in the time when the 90th Congress of Chinese Communist Party is declaring a new stage of communist revolution in China. And in fact, the success of the Chinese Revolution opens another question, to which I don't have an answer. It is why was the Soviet version of communism doomed to fail, or wasn't doomed to fail? But in any case, why did it fail when the Chinese version looks to be lasting and, at least at this point, does not show any signs